Thank you, Liz. Um, well, hello everyone. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. As Liz mentioned, um, proud to be a Recycle Colorado member. Unfortunately, couldn't make it up to the summit this year. Um, Hopefully next year it'll work out. But yeah, my name is Jesse. I'm the founder of a company called Trash Panda Disc Golf, and that's a lot of words that you probably don't hear very often, let alone in succession with one another. So as a brief, quick overview, we are a disc golf company that's focused on growing the sport of disc golf sustainably. At face value, it may not seem like an unsustainable sport, but I'll get into that. And yeah, we make discs out of recycled plastic. That's the high level overview, but I'll get into the story and everything like that. So I'm getting a smile from Liz, which is all too common, but I think that means I can just get into it. So I'm going to get into it. Let me see if I can share my screen. And that way I have, advanced. Apologies, everyone. I am a Google Meet guy. So I'm learning Zoom as we speak. I'll share the whole screen and we'll see what happens. So let's do it.
Yeah, the
Oh
talking
no.
between Teams and Google Meet and Zoom, a bit of a challenge. Were you able to find the share screen button at the bottom?
Yeah, it's my computer is now making me it's gonna make me quit and come back. So I will be right back. Liz, can you entertain
Okay,
for me?
I will entertain.
Thank you.
I will probably be giving away some of what Jesse is about to talk about. One of the things that Trash Panda went through is the Next Cycle program, which, if you're not familiar with the Next Cycle program, it is a program sponsored by the Colorado Department of Public Health and the Environment. And what they do is provide resources and training so that small business startups, such as Jesse, have the support they need to grow their business in a sustainable way. And what the Next Cycle program focuses on are businesses that are looking to reduce waste in some way. Jesse, I see your screen. I will hush.
There we go. All right. I'm glad that worked. Apologies, everybody. Um, all right, well, we'll just get into it then. Sorry about that. I will make sure all the Zoom settings are proper and in place next time. Yeah, so I have been playing disc golf for about 15 years. And the way I always like to start presentations like this is with to a simple question: what on earth is disc golf? Because a lot of people are probably asking that. And so disc golf is a sport that's very similar to what disc golfers refer to as traditional golf. In exchange for clubs and balls, we use plastic frisbees that are called discs and play on typical courses that are 9 or 18 holes. There's these metal basket contraption things that you probably have seen in a local park or two and thought to yourself, what is that? And now you know not only what it is, but you know to watch out for flying frisbees too. So that is kind of what disc golf is in a nutshell. And it was founded back in the 70s and experienced a pretty steady growth for about 40 years until the COVID-19 pandemic created really what became a perfect storm for the sport's growth. At a time where everyone was kind of looking for something that was outdoor, socially distanced, and not only all of those things, but accessible as well. You can kind of get like your first frisbees for like $20 and just go out and play for free. 99% of disc golf courses are still free to play. So outdoor, socially distanced, and accessible, along with a worldwide worldwide lockdown, just created this perfect storm. And the sport over the past 4 years has now over doubled compared to the previous 40 years, making disc golf something that many in this room probably have heard of at least once or twice. Whereas maybe if we talked in 2019 or 2018, you wouldn't have heard of it. So disc golf is a really interesting sport that's experienced a lot of growth in the last couple of years. A lot of people compare it to like a pickleball style growth, where pickleball, we weren't really talking about it a couple of years ago, and here we are talking about it. And now we have statistics like in Colorado, there's over 200 courses statewide, which is awesome. If you pull up a map and look at Colorado, it's actually like quite a bit of courses, probably relatively close to your home, even though you might not realize it. And then the world's top professionals are now making like $1 million a year, not like over $1 million a year, which is crazy. And yes, there's a professional disc golf. It's just like an interesting sport that's growing like crazy. And as someone who started playing back in 2008, it's really exciting for me to see this grow. I love this sport so much, and disc golf really became my main hobby for years of my life. It really offered me like almost like a therapy, an individual type of therapy. A lot of people probably have experienced something like this through maybe hiking or just being out in nature, gardening, etc. That was what disc golf was for me. And so this growth is fantastic, and it seems like there's not much of a problem. But for me, there is one pretty big issue, and that's that throughout the whole time of this growth, the use of recycled plastics in the sport is little to none. And so we have an outdoor sport that depends on plastic production. And while I didn't know much at the time, growing up and playing the sport, I thought those kind of seemed at odds. It was weird to me that recycled plastic wasn't as prevalent. And I remember thinking to myself pretty early on, like maybe my first year, where's the recycled plastic? Like, why not more of it? And I had this like moment where I really thought about it. And then naturally, I did nothing for 12 years. So um, I started to just play and enjoy and keep playing the sport, but did nothing about that and kept thinking to myself, someone has to do something. Someone should do something, not realizing until I was laid off at the beginning of 2020 that that someone was going to be me. And so in early 2020, as many you either, if you weren't, you probably know someone who was laid off at the beginning of COVID. I was laid off and kind of looked at my life and thought, I've always wanted to start something, and ironically enough, now seems like a good time to do that. And so I thought to myself, what are the hobbies in my life? What are the things I love, etc. And I looked at disc golf, and there was a unique problem that I felt like a problem I wanted solved for me that I'd been waiting on someone else to solve. And so I thought to myself, well, I'll make a disc out of recycled plastic in my garage. How hard could it be? Yeah, Liz is giving the perfect gestures for that. I probably was honestly like that at the time, genuinely naive. And how hard could it be to make an injection molded, recycled, performance based product in my garage? So I built an injection. This is where we start the story. I built an injection machine in my garage that operated with my body weight. As you can see here, I am pulling down this lever arm, and towards the left side of that lever arm, there is a plunger that is pushing down through a barrel. Those are all heating elements over the barrel. And then the mold is on the bottom, and I'm pushing plastic into a mold. Um, this is my this was my solution to the I'll make a disc out of recycled plastic in my garage uh, thing. So without a lot of startup capital, I basically decided to learn everything I could in my garage. I My background is in marketing. I knew absolutely nothing about plastics, engineering, injection molding, recycled plastics, etc. And so I learned everything on the fly and really learned it with my hands, which was really cool. For example, um, some plastic, I'll talk about high density polyethylene at first, for example. Some high density polyethylene, when I would push it through the barrel, was really easy to push through. And then some of it was really hard to push through. And that's a thing called melt flow or melt flow index. I didn't know what that was, but I learned it by just doing it. And so it was a really unique opportunity to learn something really from the ground up. Um, to illustrate how little I knew at the time, I posted a video on YouTube about doing this. And in the video, I said, if you have any tips for what I could do to make this easier on myself or easier to do, let me know. And that video actually did surprisingly well, and a ton of comments came through, and almost every other comment said, increase the length of the lever arm and it'll increase your torque. And I was over here Googling what is torque. Genuinely, I knew so little at the time that it was a ground up learning experience. But I was provided the opportunity to really learn everything in my garage. So um, from there, I started the process of prototyping. Once I'd learned a few things, I started to prototype the products that we would make. This is the first product. It's basically about the size of my hand. It's called a mini. In disc golf, it's used as a marker, similar to a marker you might use on a golf course. Markers on a golf course are used only on the green. Minis on a disc golf course are used everywhere on the course. And so our first product was that, because I was trying to make a performance-based product out of basically a frisbee that you could throw 60 to 80 miles an hour, hit a tree, and it would be just fine. And I was trying to do that out of recycled plastic, and it proved to be much more complicated than I thought. So I decided to kind of pivot early on and make a product that was not performance based, still within the sport, that definitely could be made out of recycled plastic. As I continued to prototype the discs on that machine, I'll just go back and remind people that I'm doing this all in this place right here. So actually on the wall behind me there are all of those minis. So that's a fun little Easter egg. So I started prototyping the minis. And then in addition to that, I prototyped discs. So this disc is now going to be a little larger than a mini, about 8.5 to 9 inches in diameter, but it is a smaller diameter than a frisbee. And that's because discs are more aerodynamic, meaning you can throw them farther and with a little bit more control and whatnot. So disc golf discs, even though at face value it's like, is that frisbee golf? Is it disc golf? Um, Disc golf is different in the sense that it uses a different shaped disc, if you will. And so while you might throw a frisbee, like a really long throw with a frisbee might be 200 feet, or 300 feet would be like, world class ultimate throw. In disc golf, you're talking more like 500 to 700 feet would be a world class disc golf throw. So those aerodynamics come into play. Anyway, the recycled discs in the garage were looking really cool and fun and swirly. And I continued to prototype. And the whole time I was doing that, I'm kind of brushing over 2 years. This is all from, 2020 and 2021. The whole time we told our story on YouTube as well, where we started to kind of amass a following and a community and build community around the idea of creating products that are good for your game and great for the planet, as well as growing the sport sustainably. Growing the sport sustainably is our mission. This is kind of jumping forward a little bit, but we've told our story for 3 years now. And as we've amassed it based on a screenshot I took yesterday. It looks like 33,000 subscribers. And additionally, 2.5 over 2.5 million individual views, which is crazy to think about. But we've been able to expand our story, and it's brought us people like Liz, which she mentioned earlier, which is fun. But it's been a really cool way to kind of expand what we're doing. As far as I'm concerned, when it comes to sustainability, we have a saying at Trash Panda it's not about someone doing everything, but everyone doing something. And I find that a lot of people in the world outside of the sustainability sector, when they hear sustainability, it often brings up all of the baggage that they previously carried around the subject. And people might be turned off. They might not want to talk about it. They might feel like in order to do something sustainable, they have to change their entire life. They have to do everything. And that's why we say it's not about someone doing everything, but rather everyone doing something. And so our YouTube presence and our social media presence has allowed us to expand Trash Panda to not just be this one dude in his garage hanging on the most Flintstones injection machine of all time, but rather it's become a community of people around the world focused on growing the sport we love sustainably. With that, I jumped ahead a little bit, but with that, as we amassed that following, it meant that as soon as we released those products, there was a high demand and a low supply, because the supply was me pushing one by one by one in my garage. And the demand was, at the time we released our first product, we had 10,000 subscribers. And so we could not even begin to keep up. So it came to the next phase of our business, which was scaling our manufacturing. And scaling our manufacturing happened in conjunction with a local injection molder here in Denver. So we have our warehouse right here in Denver. We're a mile away from our injection molder, and we also supply most of our material through Direct Polymers, who is, I could probably throw a frisbee there. So they are very close. Uh, Direct Polymers was also mentioned earlier. Anyway, so the scaling of our manufacturing made it possible to kind of increase and try to keep up with demand. And that happened at a really unique time as well. This was in early 2022 when I was also accepted to the Next Cycle Colorado program. So it was a really cool moment where, in conjunction, I was able to focus on moving from a garage to scaled manufacturing, as well as really thinking about scaling the entirety of the business through Next Cycle Colorado, which, if you haven't heard of it, it's kind of like a local boot camp, if you will, boot camp slash incubator, focused on waste diversion and connecting companies and individuals with like local government and grants and whatnot. And it's fantastic. We had a great time. It taught me a ton. And so we scaled our manufacturing. And later last year, we were able to launch our first disc to the world, which was the one on the left. It's called the Inner Core. And we named it Inner Core because there's a fun little play on the planet there. But additionally, it was kind of like our dedication to our community, the people who made it possible to do what we're doing. So we released that in November of last year. And I have a million stories about how crazy it was releasing that product. But when all was said and done, when the dust settled, we quickly sold out of 10,000 of those Frisbees that are somewhere in at least 20 different countries, and on disc golf courses in at least 20 different countries around the world. So that was awesome. We've continued to innovate and bring new materials to the table. That one, for example, was made out of TPU. We recently launched the Inner Core in a TPE blend plastic as well. All of the plastic we use, I should mention, is 100% recycled. We've never used virgin plastic at all, which is awesome. If you're not familiar with injection molding, the injection molding industry kind of states that a good combination of materials would be like 25% recycled with 75% virgin. And so we kind of just flipped that completely and went 100% recycled, which creates problems. As I said, I have a lot of stories around that. And when you're trying to make a performance-based product, it creates a handful more issues. But ultimately, we set out to prove that it was possible, to prove that there was a better way. And last year, not only were we able to prove that there's a better way, but we were able to build on that as well. Meaning that we are just a couple weeks away from releasing the disc on the right that you're seeing in this photo, the Dune, which is a fun new disc that we'll be releasing. It's a mid-range as opposed to the original is a putter. And we anticipate doing about the same amount of discs on this release as well. So we are building something with the goal of saying there's a better way and it's possible inside of an industry that has used little to no recycled plastic at all. And many think of disc golf as a hippie sport, full of some people who would probably love recycled plastics, but the reality is it's kind of just something no one is really thinking about and no one was really talking about until we brought it to the table. So we've started a movement within the sport and we're super excited about it because it is really creating some change. And now, as of today, just before this Dune is going to be released, we've recycled over 10,000 pounds of plastic into end market products that, as I mentioned, are sitting somewhere in 40 different countries at least. And that's 40,000 individual products that, if you look closely on the photo in the left, and actually if you look super closely on the photo in the right, I can't even see that. There's no way anyone can. They both say recycled in Colorado. So 40,000 products stamped with the words recycled in Colorado on them is something I take a lot of pride in because I'm proud of Colorado and I'm proud of Colorado's efforts in sustainability. So um, as far as trying to think if there was anything else, Liz mentioned a couple things that would be helpful to mention. I mentioned the next cycle and yada yada and markets. At this point, I should also mention next cycle is designed to kind of set you up for a grant. At this point, we have not received a grant from the state. We'll keep applying. Maybe one day we will. But we've been able to do it all off the kind of bootstrapping style that we approached. And I kind of wanted to land the plane. I was thinking about it beforehand. How could I land the plane in a way that kind of made sense? I guess I should probably use like a land the disc now, but I'm going to use land the plane. Anyway, um, I thought that one of the things that I think back to the beginning of Trash Panda and how naive I was. Um, I really, I really did think I'll make a disc out of recycled plastic in my garage. How hard could it be? I really did think like this was, I thought I would have one out by the end of 2020. And I thought that was a very conservative timeline. Little did I know it wouldn't be till the end of 2022. Um, as far as just projects you might be working on or anything else, the two little recommendations I think I would give is just to be a storyteller and a student. I think we all have a really, really unique, um, we're all working on something so unique in terms of sustainability and the stories that we can tell. And the reality is that we are competing with some companies that are trying to tell stories that are more on the side of greenwashing than on the side of actually creating and making change. So tell your story because people want to be a part of something. And I remember one time my dad was like, "You've done such a good job of it really seems like you've helped solve people's problem of environmentalism and sustainability." And I was like, whoa, no, not at all. I don't know what you're talking about. If we've solved any problem, it's the problem of belonging. People want to be a part of something, and we've invited people to be a part of Trash Panda with us. So that's the storyteller side. And then as student, things are always changing and just continuing to learn. I think the one thing I want to carry with me is the fact that I never want to stop learning. I never want to stop telling stories. And going back to the very beginning of Trash Panda, I hope I can continue to manifest that naivete that helped us get where we got. Because it's going to take people in our world who are naive and optimistic enough to believe that a better is possible to actually make it happen. So there's another founder locally of Zero Shoes who was on a podcast I recently listened to recently, Steve. He just said the words hyper optimistic and naive, and that just sat with me. So if I could land the plane anywhere, if I can encourage anyone, I think it would just to be, or the words would be being hyper optimistic and naive. So yeah, thank you all for having me. That's what I got.
Thank you so much. I hope you can see the applause that's coming across the screen, Jesse.
I can. I'm not a Zoom guy, and it's blowing my mind. So I can.
And I would love to open it up to questions. I've got a few questions, but I'm not going to hog it because I've peppered Jesse with my questions before. Michelle, please.
Thank you, Jesse. This was fabulous. I am a chemical engineer in my background, and I love how you jumped in with 100% recycled plastic. And everyone could just imagine the plethora or the huge sample of all these different kind of plastics and films and everything, and what a nightmare. And that's part of the problem. So can you just give us a summary of the challenges that you went through and what went wrong, and then what you tried and what went right, and how that journey was?
Yeah. I can give you a summary in 24 hours time, and I can give you a summary in 2.4 minutes. So we'll see what I can do. As far as the material, well, I'll go to injection molding first. For those who don't understand injection molding, or maybe just don't know it as well, injection molding is really an art form. And the design with injection molding is to create absolute consistency so you can dial in every single variable and change one thing ever so slightly to get that perfect part, is what it's called. People call what comes off of the mold a part, but it's really just a product. As far as injection molding out of 100% recycled plastic, you take this desire to do consistent and make everything as consistent as possible and immediately throw it out the window. So your feedstock is not necessarily consistent. So some of the problems can be resolved in just getting the cleanest and best sorted regrind possible, which typically comes from the post-industrial side of things. As far as the problem there for me is like some stuff just needs to be recycled even if it's not the cleanest. So sometimes it's then an equipment issue. For example, right now we're in the middle of getting a metal separator. So our plastic will run, all of our regrind will run through a metal separator first to detect non-ferrous metals, because those won't get stuck on the magnets that are in the process. And yeah, so sometimes there's metal in the plastic, sometimes there's other problems. And then on top of that, the third thing I'd say is probably that injection molding discs is a very specific thing as well. The first rule of injection molding, as far as molds are concerned, is to inject into the thickest wall of the product first. And discs, again, throw that out the window immediately and inject straight into the thinnest part. And so there's more art form there as well. I think, classic startup story. A lot of our problems that were like our biggest problems a year ago are like so easy now. So that's a rough overview, but like those are a few of the big pieces that come to play.
Thank you. That was awesome.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Michelle.
Jesse, would you elaborate a little bit on the difference between the minis, which you characterize as a non-performance product, and the inner core, which you characterize as a performance product, and what some of the challenges are in using a recycled material to produce each of those things?
Yeah, by performance-based product, I simply mean that it needs to perform some kind of function that actually could impact the integrity of the product. So for example, the minis are used on the course. You put them on the ground, you put them back in your bag, but you're not really doing anything to them. A good example might be like my phone case. That is clearly very dirty. With my phone, just because I have to clip my phone around, or the case around the phone, that would be kind of like it has to perform a task, and that could potentially break the plastic case, right? So as far as recycled material, just because of the inconsistency and potential contamination or anything like that, if it really isn't perfected, you might have, on a chemical level, you might have some kind of weak point, if you will, that could lead to a crack or something like that. So we're very intentional with our QC process as well. But I don't know if I hope that kind of answers the question.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Of course, I play disc golf, so it's hard for me to know an answer for those that don't.
Yeah.
Michelle, you come at us again.
So can we consider this a Colorado story, in the sense, are you getting your plastics, your feedstock from Colorado businesses or MRFs?
Yeah, that's a great question. We're doing the best we can to do that. That's the first thing we want to do. As far as the plastic we're using, TPU is a pretty specific one. That's for the discs. The minis are absolutely, the minis are 100% from Colorado. Those are a Colorado story, period. The discs, it's kind of wherever we can get the material from. I would say at this point, if I had to land on a percentage of, it's hard to say exactly how much has been to nail down a Colorado story, but we are doing our best to make it that. So we're digging under every hole we can to find TPU in the state somewhere, and make that possible. And then we also, I didn't mention this, but we also launched the first ever disc recycling program. So in disc golf, the uh, each disc has like a name, and each company has their own name for their plastic blends and stuff like that. None of it has any helpful information for any kind of recycler to actually recycle the discs unless they have insider knowledge. So since we have that insider knowledge, we created that program, and already we've received over 10,000 discs to be recycled, which is crazy. So that's a huge thing that we're working on right now, is recycling actual discs into discs. And then, oh my gosh, there was one other thing I was going to mention there. I don't know what it was.
Well, I would nudge you, Jesse, to talk about the other sustainable efforts that Trash Panda has been engaged in over this last year. I think that's worth sharing with the group.
Yeah, we have a few commitments. One is we are a 1% for the planet member, which means 1% of our revenue goes to 1% for the planet, or organizations that are doing something for the planet, which is awesome. I think that is personally a low bar that any company can achieve. So 1% for the planet is an awesome thing. We're a member of that. We also this last year made the decision to offset all of our shipping. So all of our shipping is offset by us. So if you buy a product from us and it ships to you, we make sure through a partnership with Tradewater to offset the shipping on that. And what we did when we decided that is we retroactively went back and also offset all of the shipping we'd ever done. So anything that's ever shipped from Trash Panda has been offset, which is cool. Our shipping materials all come from a company called Eco Enclose that is in Louisville. They are right here, and they are amazing. All of our cardboard is 100% recycled cardboard. The printing on it is done with algae ink. The plastic mailers are recycled mailers. They're an incredible company, and they're right here, which is crazy. So not everyone, you know, that's a lucky thing for me that we just so happen to be close to them. But we are huge fans of theirs. So yeah, those are a couple of the things. Additionally, we this last year hosted a international course cleanup weekend where we encourage people to go out and clean up their course on Earth Day weekend. That was awesome. We saw a huge impact there with over 200 course cleanups around the world, which was wild. And then additionally, what else? Are you thinking of anything, Liz?
The water on the
On the
PDT.
tour? Oh yeah, with the Disc Golf Pro Tour, we also this year implemented refill stations at all of their events. So we're encouraging refill on the course. It's crazy, but it's just so easy logistically to go get a flat of single-use plastic water bottles. And so we're trying to make it worth their while to not do that and to have refill stations on the course. So that's happening at all Pro Tour events this year, which is fun.
And yeah, Michelle, go ahead.
So there's a lot in the news about plastics to plastics recycling and pyrolysis. And the EPA luckily just voted down exempting them from air emissions reporting. I mean, saying that they have to report. What is your feeling on some of that plastics to plastics pyrolysis? Are you following it? Has it impacted your business model at all?
Yeah. To be honest, no. I'm not. I'm not following it. I feel like I genuinely, when I started Trash Panda, I was like, plastic is plastic is plastic. So this has been a huge learning curve. And I think if I was to start, another project or another company, I would want to do something where um, there was a little more intentionality behind, like maybe some type of compression molding of just mixed plastics or something like that, because I really think that is a way that our world can move forward with recycling in a huge,
Mhm.
huge way. But our plastic that we need is just so specific. However, what we are finding is that there's no one recycling discs in the world, so that's at least a first place we can go to. So yeah, but as far as the pyrolysis is concerned, I'm not as attuned to that.
Ringa, thank you for, oh, you're on mute, Ringa.
Oh,
Yeah,
sorry. Yeah. Hi, Jesse.
ask
Yeah, that
away.
was a very interesting and inspiring presentation. I have a
Thank
couple
you.
of questions. You said your raw material or feedstock is TPU. What are some typical objects that you take in to create that feedstock? Like, do you take in what type of materials?
Yeah, generally, I kind of tell people think automotive industry, medical industry, um, and then even like agriculture industry. Those are kind of the big places. Most of what we've done, because of just needing to at least get our feet under us and get the cleanest source possible, has been on the post-industrial side. So it's been coming straight from the manufacturer.
Oh,
But yeah, that's the general way I like to say it. But I have seen TPU being used everywhere.
okay.
It's just not your um, takeout container, and
Yeah, it's not the typical household plastic. Yeah, or
it's so exactly,
the single-use plastic. Yeah.
and that's because it's so much more expensive and then
Right.
so much more durable. It typically is those more long-term use, higher priced items, or just needing to be more durable. So, um, yeah.
Okay. The other question is, you said you're going to recycle the discs themselves. So, what do you think about the properties of the plastic, which degrades with every time you heat it and recycle it, right? The tensile strength and other properties. So, how many times can you really effectively recycle a disc? Do you have any
No, that's
statistics on that?
That's a great question. One of the videos I want to make and projects I want to do when we have some time is literally just make a disc, grind it up, make it again, grind it up, make it again,
Yeah.
grind it up, and just do that. And I say make a disc, I mean 100 in a row, grind them all up, 100 in a row, grind them all up. That way we can actually really see it. As far as we've recycled, we've only gone about 5 heat cycles in, and we haven't seen those properties change at like a level that would impact our product in our sport. So, as far as I can tell, um, at this point, we're way before even needing to worry about that. But I do want to try and just see what we could
Yeah.
figure out from it, because first of all, why not? I like that everyone's nodding, because it's like, yeah, it'd be cool. It'd be really interesting. Um, but yeah, as far as like the 2, 3, 4 cycles, we haven't found any issues yet.
Okay, so that's interesting. And I don't know, Michelle and Liz, if you have any thoughts on that, because what we hear typically is beyond like about 3 times, the material degrades quite significantly, right? I like PET or other material. What are your thoughts on that?
And I'll let Michelle answer first. She's got more knowledge.
Okay.
I agree, and we talk about the knowledge that people have and the proprietary chemicals. That was like one of my questions. Like, do the elastomers or the UV additives prevent you from reaching some of your repeat performance standards? Because that there's no control in the market as to what gets added, nor is there any requirement to put the ingredients and the quantities of what you use for proprietary reasons. So from
Yep.
an experimental viewpoint, that can make your job so expensive, prohibitively expensive, that you can't
It,
find this out. And I
it
do think,
is,
yeah,
yeah. It makes it complicated, but disc golf manufacturers like to say that they have a very proprietary blend. It's pretty rudimentary still in terms of
Mhm.
what's in there. So we really have only run into a couple issues where we're kind of holding those as like once we have more time for R&D on that, we'll go further down that rabbit hole. But as far as the general products on the market are concerned, it's not as soon as you get inside of the sport or the industry, if you will, it's easier to know what it is. And that allows us to be able to then recycle it. Or some people are willing, some manufacturers have been willing to just through an NDA discuss what the blend is. We are, though, I should say, additionally in currently trying to work out some other products, some other end market products that we could create that would be from the still tangential within disc golf. So, for example, discs and minis. Minis could potentially be made out of third, fourth, fifth generation recycled plastic, whereas those discs might need to be second, third generation. So we're trying to work out some other products that have lower performance needs and lower QC needs that we could then take and make into another product. So ideally, all of our minis one day will only be made out of our regrind because that's then third or fourth generation. So yeah,
Awesome.
thank you.
I have a quick question about how much does CDPHE regulate you? Like, what is your mountain of regulatory paperwork that you have to do?
In terms
Of your raw materials, of your process, are you at this scale kind of not reaching any problems with air quality, water quality, and energy usage?
because we work with a local manufacturer, I think all of those regulations go through them. And
Mm-hmm.
so as far as I'm concerned, it's very little.
Okay,
On their side, it might be more so.
great.
The jump from prototyping with a $500 mold and a $2,000 injection machine in my garage is to a $50,000 mold and a $250,000 injection machine. So there's no like happy medium there that we could afford to scale, but it also
Mm-hmm.
meant we connected with the experts too, which was super helpful. So I am forever grateful for our manufacturer. So yeah.
And on that, Jesse, could you speak a little bit in broad terms of how you felt next cycle benefited Trash Panda?
Yeah. Did you say in broad terms?
Well, however broad or specific that you want
Yeah,
to be.
yeah.
Like one of the questions I had was it going through next cycle that made the connection with the manufacturer that allowed you to scale up, or had you already made that connection
Mm.
outside of that program?
Yeah, we'd already made that connection. As far as next cycle is concerned, in very broad terms, I just say that like as a startup founder and as or just let's just call it problem solving because you might not be a startup founder, but just in an organization where you're trying to solve a problem. Sometimes it is just you are so close to it that you just keep going and you keep going and you don't necessarily take a moment to step outside yourself and look at it and really think. And I would say in very broad terms, Next Cycle Colorado helped me just pause and think about not only the product I was making, but the organization that I was building, the brand I was building, all of those pieces to really be intentional about it. So knowing Next Cycle specifically helps you pitch your company. It's kind of designed around a couple different pitches and pitch competitions, and so just having to tell random people what you do really helps you formalize what it is you actually do.
Go ahead, Michelle.
Jesse, if you could give high school students one word of advice on careers and they want to do something in the sustainability umbrella world, what would you give them?
Well, before the sustainability world, I would say, and this might mean I might need to say this to parents before high school students, but YouTube is a viable career. So first and foremost, YouTube is unbelievable and absolutely amazing. The reality of the internet is that there are dark things that happen, but it is ultimately, in my belief, a net positive for our world. And YouTube's the same. Ultimately, what rises to the top is the best. And so, as far as YouTube is concerned, there is a lot of good happening. In terms of career advice, I think I would then say, just we are kind of just moving past the as far as I see it, it feels like we are moving past the world. The world is oversaturated at this point. We don't just need another product to be another product. We need it to do something. And so we live in this new world where there's this interesting gray area between for-profits and nonprofits that's taken up by what's referred to as benefit corporations, or even there's like the certified B Corp type stuff. I think that ultimately we need any product that's being made now, any company that's being made now, to do something good, like bring good to our world. Don't just create something for the sake of creating something, but make sure that it moves our world forward. So
That's great.
yeah.
That's great.
Thanks.
Thank you, Jesse. Wise words. I have one last question that I think would be useful to anybody trying to pursue something like this. From my perspective, your storytelling skills and marketing acumen is a lot to do with how successful and how you've been able to scale up. Do you have any resources that other folks that are struggling with getting their message out? Obviously, YouTube is a good mechanism. Are there ways to get better at YouTube that you would recommend looking into?
Yeah, for sure. I might go a little broader than that, and then I'll answer that question too. But yes, thank you for saying that. There's a reason we had 30,000 subscribers before we had a product. And that's because marketing is my background, not injection molding. So I think as far as storytelling is concerned, the one that really like kind of opened Pandora's box for me was an author called Seth Godin. There's a book called Tribes, and then also This is Marketing, both by him, that are quite interesting books. They're very, very 10,000 foot. They're not super practical, but they really make you start asking quite interesting questions. And that kind of opened it for me. Getting a little more practical, there's a gentleman named Donald Miller who wrote a book called Story Brand. That one also is fantastic. The reality with social media and with our world today is everything's changing. Like TikTok wasn't a thing when I started Trash Panda. And if I started today, I probably would be a little more enmeshed on TikTok than I am. And so it's just always learning something new. I think that's why I ended with be a storyteller and be a learner, is because learning is such a key part in that. But I find that maybe the best suggestion I have is that I am really only telling stories to myself because I am Trash Panda's main audience. Like, I'm our ideal customer. I was sitting here for 12 years wanting this to be a thing and waiting for someone to do it. And so I kind of just operate out of the belief that if I feel this way, someone else probably also feels this way. And there are surprising communities. I mean, I've explained disc golf. Disc golf is probably a surprising community to people here. There's a YouTuber I saw the other day who does carpet cleaning, and he cleans rugs, and he has like 1.5 million subscribers. It's just, it is like, people want to be a part of something. They want to hear interesting stories. I don't know. It's just, there's no limits on it. So yeah, I think, it's also just fun to tell stories too. It's fun to to do it that way. So yeah, those two books are huge for me, specific to YouTube. And this kind of goes outside of YouTube too. But if you want to learn how to be a better YouTuber, there is no better place than watching YouTube videos about how to be a better YouTuber. And also just doing it. If you watch my last video and my first video, they are very, very far apart in terms of quality. And just doing it and just training that muscle and keeping it going is a huge part of it. Last thing I want to say, I forgot about this earlier, so I just want to quickly say, we are what would be referred to as like an end market manufacturer because we actually make a product. And you had asked the question, Liz, before this about kind of could Trash Panda potentially be replicated around Colorado? And I would love to see more end market manufacturers and more end market products coming out of Colorado. We have way too much feedstock here in state that could be used for so many things. So yeah, I think it's time to bring more specifically end market manufacturers here and end market products here, and that's really tricky when it comes to the state and different organizations' goals when it comes to defining tonnage diverted versus like if you're making it into an actual product, it's just a different story. And so somehow I think the like Recycle Colorado, the state, and just everyone, like it would be really cool to encourage more end market products coming out of Colorado specifically.
I wholeheartedly agree. As you know,
Yeah.
thank you, Jesse.
Yeah,
We're
thank you.
gonna
That's
stop
great.
the recording here. More applause. Thank you so much, and thank you for staying on longer and asking, answering all of our questions. Before we let Jesse completely go, I want to make sure. Did anybody else have any questions? I didn't see any in the chat, and I didn't see any hands. I don't want to. Okay, it looks like we're good with questions. Okay, thank you, Jesse. Thank you so much. Get outside, enjoy the
Will
lovely
do.
day that it has
Also,
become.
I want to say hi to Jamie. Jamie was with me in Next Cycle, Colorado as well. So hi, Jamie.
Hi, Jesse. I thought you did a great presentation. Good job.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Look at
Thanks for
that.
having me.
All of these questions. Thanks for being here. We've just got a couple of Recycle Colorado bits to share for those of you who are left. I think Allie's got a slide that she'll put up here in a moment.